For our July-August 2022 issue of True West Magazine, we pulled out all the stops to try to once and for all capture the true visage of the great Sioux war chief, Crazy Horse. Now, if you're like me, you probably have a snotty idea about what Crazy Horse should look like, and that would be with a great big war bonnet, aquiline nose, high cheekbones, long black straight hair, smooth face, a very searing visage. You know, maybe somewhere in this zone, which is kind of one of my first sketches on trying to capture him. But it turns out that most of that is completely wrong. Now, we had some great help. For starters, our good friend and best-selling author, Mark Lee Gardner. He has a brand new book out. It's called The Earth Is All That Lasts, Crazy Horse and Sitting Bull, and the Last Stand of the Great Sioux Nation. And we were able to contact him. And I want to bring him in the studio right now because we're going to talk about how we actually captured Crazy Horse and brought him not only to the magazine, but to the public at large. Hey, how you doing, Mark?
Good, good. How are you doing?
Great. So when you and I were talking, I was just completely stunned because number one, he had curly hair. That just blew my mind. And this is from people who knew him, who described him. Isn't that right?
That is correct. In fact, his nickname as a child was Curly because of his hair, and it was light colored as well.
And so then the second thing that blew my mind was he preferred one arrow in the back. Is that right?
That is correct. Yeah, he did not. Well, and there was a reason for that, Bob, is his personal holy man, Hornships, who was a cousin, told him he was never to wear a war bonnet. That was part of his war medicine that, Hornships said he would never be killed by a bullet. And he instructed him, gave him different charms, but one of those instructions was he was never to wear a war bonnet like you kind of see in those classic Hollywood Westerns and historic photos.
So then moving on, he didn't have a big Roman nose or high cheekbones. He had actually kind of a narrow face. Is that right?
Apparently so. He had kind of a narrow nose. And we do have a lot of descriptions from people that knew him. And I think what you're alluding to, Bob, is the challenge. There's no photograph. And I know we're going to talk about that. But we do have some descriptions of his physical features, including a pretty ugly scar that's going to play into our story as well.
Yeah, well, let's go there because I was shocked to see that he had a pretty disfiguring scar due to a jealous husband.
Yes. Crazy Horse absconded with a woman he had taken a fancy to named Black Buffalo Woman. Unfortunately, she was married to a man named No Water. And when No Water returned to their camp and she was gone, and he had an inkling of who had taken her, and he followed their trail, and he borrowed a weapon, a revolver, once he got to the camp where Crazy Horse was, went right into the lodge, walked up to him, pointed the revolver almost point blank at his face, and pulled the trigger, and the ball went in, they say, just below the left nostril, and exited, kind of went around the jaw and exited out. And there are no plastic surgeons in the Lakota camps at that time. So really? This has to kind of heal the best it can. And it disfigured his face where it was noticeable. It wasn't slight. I mean, in fact, one observer said it gave him a bit of a fierce appearance where this wound had later healed.
When you think about that, possibly one of the last faces that Custer saw at the Little Bighorn was Crazy Horse's face. That puts a different spin on that.
Yes. Well, I always kind of thought of it. You've seen kind of like these classic. I mean, the classic story of the French swordsman with the scar, from battle, from a saber. It is kind of like, I kind of think the same thing. I mean, this is this distinguishing mark that makes him even more imposing as a fighter.
Well, so then you gave us the wonderful descriptions, and then I found myself as an artist kind of trapped. And I thought, well, curly hair, with a narrow face. And I thought, what am I going to do? So I contacted one of my artist friends. That's Buckeye Blake, is a great Buckeye Blake out of Texas. And I said, have you got any visages around or images that you think might be a baseline for us to build on for the cover of True West? And that I don't know where he finds this stuff, but he found this wonderful anonymous Sioux brave that had curly hair. That was the starting point. And so we were in a Slack meeting. Now, I don't know if you guys know what Slack is. It's a cousin to Zoom, and that's how we work remotely now at True West Magazine. So we are with everybody on staff, and some people are in California, and some people are in England, some people are all over the country, some are in Florida. And I look, and there, Greg Carroll in the background, he just moved into a new house. And so we're on Slack, and all the screens are there, and I'm looking. And I say to Greg, I go, hey, Greg, is that an Andy Warhol in the back behind you there? Is that the Russell Means Andy Warhol? And he says, yes. And I said, I want to see that. That's exactly what we're going to do here. And that was the leap of imagination. So then Buckeye Blake sent me this anonymous Sioux warrior, and we got a good screenshot of that. Robert Ray, my production manager, he put that through the magic touches to give that the best quality that he could. And then we sent that down to JC Printing in Phoenix, Arizona, and they printed 4 art prints. And those came back to my house via courier, and I put them on my art desk. And I did 4 different versions. And I was really trying to play Mark with the scar, because it would be easy to kind of do a Bela Lugosi or a Frankenstein kind of a scarring. But I wanted to keep it a little bit subtle. Maybe I went too far. I don't know. But we did 4 of those. And then our art director, Dan the Man Harshberger, he extrapolated between the 4, and we ended up with our cover. Now, how accurate do you think we got it, Mark?
Well, I mean, I have no idea. It's one of those.
Thanks for coming on, Mark.
Yeah.
He has no idea.
Yeah. I did do a book on crazy that just came out, but well, I mean, Bob, the thing is that that's what you did. I think is what makes history so fun. I mean, when we know everything about everything in the past, it's not controversial anymore. To me, history's kind of dead. And the fact that you got to play around and you took the descriptions and, you came up with your version, other people have come up with their versions or artistic representations. And that's why we're still talking about it now, is because we really don't know. But our inquiring minds, I mean, we're passionate about this. We want to know, what did he look like? And so I think you did a great job. I don't know that Crazy Horse looked exactly like that because we don't have a photo, but I like it. And as a matter of fact, I actually own one of those versions this day. So.
And you stole it, by the way.
I did, yeah. It was a gift. Thank you very much.
From the artist, yeah. And you well deserved. It was my pleasure to gift that to you. So let's talk a little bit about, there are purported photos of Crazy Horse online. You can find them easily. And let's talk about some of them and whether they have a chance to be actually him. Probably the most famous one is the one from Gary Owen up in
Crow Agency.
Crow Agency,
yes.
Up in Montana. Let's talk about that one, because that's the one that seems to have the most provenance. They claim that the family has weighed in and said that that's him. What do you say to that?
Yeah, exactly. It's really the most intriguing of all the different photos that have been put forward as possibly Crazy Horse. This comes from the family of a chief of scouts at Fort Robinson. The guy knew Crazy Horse, and according to the family, Baptiste Littleback Garnier identified this tintype image as being a picture of Crazy Horse. And there's even a notarized statement, I think, by Garnier's daughter that says exactly that. But it has a lot of problems, and we can kind of list them out. I mean, the first one, anything taken would have had to have been photographed at Fort Robinson in 1877. Crazy Horse is killed, murdered actually, in September of 77. There was a photographer there. In fact, that year, there were several photographers in and out of this log cabin studio. But anything taken at Fort Robinson, that picture has to show a distinct scar. And, I don't see a scar on there anywhere. And it's a tintype, so it would be on the right side of his face as opposed to the left side, because the tintypes are reversed image. But there's also some issues. I mean, this is a pretty simplistic studio in a log cabin, and there's a fairly elaborate painted backdrop, which makes it seem like a portrait that done in a more formal studio setting. Some scholars have pointed out the clothing is really more representative of kind of a Wild West show performer than it is of clothing and accoutrements of 1877. One English scholar, I mean, I tell you, this is how nerdy we get. One English scholar actually measured the width and thickness of the bones on the breastplate, and was able to extrapolate that the Indian is too short to be Crazy Horse. So it is controversial. There are many people that don't accept it as a legitimate photo of Crazy Horse, and for me, I think the bottom line is that if you don't see a scar, it's not Crazy Horse. And I don't see a scar in that image. But like I say, oral tradition, it's been handed down, and it's cool. You can go see it. It's on display at the Custer Trading Post there at Crow Agency, Montana, along with the notarized affidavit is on display there as well.
You know, I think one thing's perfectly clear, and that's just we're all flipping crazy. I think that's what people in our field are even more so, but I like it. At least we own it. We own that. We are just flipping crazy. But I love this. Now let's talk briefly about there actually was another Crazy Horse he married the widow, and how did that come down?
Yes. So after Crazy Horse was killed, one of his two wives, Nellie Larrabee, she married a Lakota named Greasing Hand, and he took the name Crazy Horse, and he was later known as Albert Crazy Horse. But there is a photograph of him, and because he took the name Crazy Horse in the 1930s, and in fact, it was plastered all over the newspaper pages in 1934, he was identified as Crazy Horse. But shortly thereafter, they realized no, and as you'll see in the image, he's wearing a war bonnet, which, according to all accounts, Crazy Horse never did.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting that what's that old saying that the choosing the right word is the difference between lightning and lightning bug, and there's just something about Albert Crazy Horse that just drains the power.
Yeah.
Hey, here's a Albert.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just like it just doesn't quite fly.
Yeah.
Now, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to mention 1934 was kind of an important year because they dedicated a memorial to Crazy Horse at Fort Robinson in Nebraska. And one of the Lakota individuals there representing, the Lakotas and Crazy Horse's people was an Indian named Coffee. And living Lakotas in 1934 who had known Crazy Horse said that he looked like or more closely resembled Crazy Horse than any other, and he was a cousin. The other individual they said resembled Crazy Horse was the revered, very famous now holy man named Black Elk, and he was also a cousin. And we actually have an early photo of Black Elk taken when he was in London performing with Buffalo Bill, and a lot of living Lakotas thought Black Elk resembled his cousin, Crazy Horse. So we have a lot of descriptions. We just don't have that actual photo.
Boy, that's very striking, and it's great to see your cousins do have that.
Yes,
that look like. So that's absolutely fascinating. What do you think that the odds are that there is a photograph still out there that was taken at Fort Robinson?
There's a slim chance because there was a photographer. We know there was a photographer at Camp Robinson at the same time Crazy Horse was there. But and actually, one photographer, James Hamilton, he took several views. He was from really Sioux City, Iowa, and he went back to his studio and printed up a catalog. And one of the entries, I believe it's 104. It's in my online essay at True West. But one of those numbers in that catalog, it just says Crazy Horse. Now, unfortunately, that image with number 104 on it, nobody's found it. And
man.
Yeah. So if we ever find that, we'll look for that scar and see if that's it. But I got to say, and we talked about this a lot, Bob, and it really adds to his mystique that we don't have a photo. It allows you to do a great artistic rendition of what you think Crazy Horse looked like. And I mean, and if there was a photo, maybe we'd be disappointed. You know, maybe he wouldn't live up to this gigantic legendary status that he has. And we talked about this, you know, when people met the real Kit Carson, they were so disappointed. He was small, he was short, and he was nothing like the guy in the dime novels. Anyway, to me, you know, Crazy Horse was modest. He was reclusive. He didn't like to speak in councils. And as I say, you know, the only time he seems to really have shown emotion was on the battlefield. And how would you capture all that on a glass plate? I just think it's impossible. So I kind of, in a way, I mean, I'm dying to see what he looked like, but in a way, I'm also kind of, I mean, maybe it's a little better. You know, we've got that great cover on True West magazines to enjoy for the time being.
Well, I think you're absolutely right that that part of his power is the fact that we don't know, and that's just so great. Well, this has been fantastic. I could talk to you all day, but we got to wrap this up. Thank you so much. The book, once again, The Earth Is All That Lasts: Crazy Horse, Sitting Bull, and the Last Stand of the Great Sioux Nation. Here's the cover one more time for you to look at. Check it out. It's on the newsstand right now. And if you like this program today, I want you to click like, and I want you to subscribe, because you're going to be in tune with a whole bunch of more great interviews just like this and talk about the Wild West. Thanks again, Mark. This was fantastic.
Hey, you're welcome. Enjoy doing it. And I love your videos. I've watched them all.